My name is Olivia Mitchell, 29 years old, and I've been saving money since I turned 18. 11 years of sacrifice, overtime shifts, and saying no to vacations led to $220,000 in my private account. Until last Tuesday when I found it empty. The money went to pay off my brother's student loans, fund his honeymoon, and buy him a luxury car. When I called them, my father laughed and said, "Thanks for your naivety, your family now. Pay your share." I couldn't stop laughing either because the money they took was actually. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this wild journey of family betrayal and sweet justice. I grew up in a modest two-story house in Naperville, a suburb just outside Chicago. My parents, Robert and Diana Mitchell, raised me and my younger brother Ethan in what appeared to be a typical middle-class American family. Dad worked as a sales manager at a car dealership, and Mom taught third grade at the local elementary school. We weren't rich, but we never went without necessities. From an early age, I noticed something different about how my parents treated Ethan and me. When I turned 16 and asked for help buying my first car, Dad told me to get a job. Meanwhile, when Ethan turned 16 2 years later, they surprised him with a brand new Ford Mustang. The pattern was clear and consistent. Ethan received, I earned. My first job was stocking shelves at Wilson's Grocery for minimum wage. I worked 20 hours a week while maintaining straight A's. Every paycheck went into a savings account my grandmother had opened for me when I was born. Grandma Helen was different from my parents. She grew up during the Great Depression and taught me the value of financial independence. Never depend on anyone else for your security, Olivia, she would tell me while showing me how to balance a checkbook. A woman must stand on her own 2 feet. Ethan, in contrast, never held a job during high school. He played football, went to parties, and maintained a C average that my parents defended as finding his path. When he wrecked his Mustang junior year, they replaced it with another car within a week. The summer after high school graduation was pivotal. While Ethan prepared for his freshman year at Northwestern University, with my parents covering his tuition, room, and board, I received a different message. "We've set aside enough for your brother's education," Mom explained one evening. "With your grades, you can get scholarships or loans like other students do. You've always been the independent one." Their words stung, but I refused to let them see my pain. Instead, I doubled down on my determination. On my 18th birthday, I opened a new private bank account at First Midwest Bank, transferring the $6,000 I had saved. My parents had been co-signers on my juvenile account, but this one was mine alone. Or so I thought. I attended Chicago Community College while working full-time as a bank teller, then bookkeeper. I studied accounting and finance, fascinated by how money worked. Each semester, I paid my tuition in cash, avoiding student loans that trapped so many of my classmates. After 2 years, I transferred to University of Illinois Chicago, continuing to work while studying. Living with my parents during those early college years saved money but cost my sanity. I listened to them boast about Ethan's fraternity life and how he was networking with future business leaders while failing classes they continued to pay for. When he called asking for extra money for spring break trips to Cancun or Miami, they never hesitated. "Your brother is building important relationships," Dad would justify after sending Ethan hundreds of dollars. That's how successful people get ahead. I moved out at 22, renting a tiny studio apartment in Chicago's Albany Park neighborhood. The commute to work and school was longer, but the freedom was worth every penny. I continued my disciplined approach to finances. No eating out, no designer clothes, no vacations. Every raise and bonus went straight into my savings account. My financial strategy was simple but effective. 30% of every paycheck went to necessities, rent, utilities, groceries, and transportation. 60% went into my savings account. The remaining 10% was my living fund for occasional movies or coffee with friends. I lived like someone making minimum wage even as my salary increased. By 25, I had completed my bachelor's degree in accounting, debt-free, and secured a position at Deloitte as a junior accountant. My starting salary was $72,000, more money than I had ever earned. Instead of upgrading my lifestyle, I maintained my frugal habits and watched my savings grow exponentially. My relationship with my family remained strained but cordial during this period. I visited for major holidays and called once a week, maintaining the appearance of a normal daughter-daughter relationship. I never discussed my finances with them, deflecting questions about my salary or savings with vague answers about doing okay. Meanwhile, Ethan took 6 years to complete his business degree, changing majors 3 times. After graduation, he bounced between jobs, never staying anywhere longer than a few months. My parents continued supporting him financially, helping with his rent and car payments. They called it helping him get established, but I saw it as enabling dependency. By my 29th birthday, through disciplined saving, smart investments, and several promotions, I had accumulated $220,000 in my private savings account. It represented 11 years of sacrifice and hard work, every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every meal cooked at home instead of eaten at restaurants. It was my security and my future, the foundation for eventually buying a home and perhaps starting my own accounting practice. I had no idea that the very people who should have been proudest of my financial responsibility were plotting to take it all away. Tuesday morning started like any other. I woke at 5:30, completed my morning workout, showered, and made coffee before checking my email. Among the usual work messages and promotional spam, a notification from First Midwest Bank caught my eye, confirmation of funds transfer. I frowned, opening it immediately. I hadn't made any transfers recently. The email confirmed a transfer of $78,000 to an account I didn't recognize. The timestamp showed it had occurred at 2:17 the previous afternoon, while I was in a client meeting. My heart rate accelerated as I logged into my online banking. The homepage loaded slowly, each second stretching my anxiety. When my account balance finally appeared, I blinked repeatedly, certain there was some mistake. Instead of $220,000, the balance showed $4,312.17. This can't be right, I whispered, clicking through to the transaction history. What I found left me breathless. Over the past week, a series of large transfers had systematically drained my account. Monday last week, $45,000 to account ending in 4273. Wednesday, $38,500 to account ending in 9185. Friday, $54,200 to account ending in 4273 again. Yesterday, $78,000 to account ending in 6092. Together with smaller transfers, almost $216,000 had vanished from my account in 7 days. My hands trembled as I dialed the bank's fraud department, a cold sweat breaking across my forehead. The customer service representative, Julie, listened calmly as I explained the unauthorized transactions. "I'm placing a freeze on your account immediately," she said. "Our fraud team will investigate these transfers. Can you verify if anyone else has access to your account information or passwords?" "No one," I insisted. I've never shared my banking passwords with anyone. But even as I said it, a memory surfaced. 3 weeks ago, Ethan had stopped by my apartment unexpectedly. He rarely visited me, claiming my neighborhood was too far from civilization. He had seemed unusually interested in my new job and finances, asking pointed questions about my savings while I made us coffee. At one point, he had asked to use my laptop to check his fantasy football scores. I had left him alone in my living room for about 15 minutes while I took a shower. "Ms. Mitchell," Julie's voice interrupted my thoughts. "I'm looking at the authorization logs for these transfers. They were all initiated from your home IP address using your credentials. The system shows correct responses to your security questions." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I didn't make these transfers. According to our records, They were authenticated with your password and the secure PIN sent to your registered phone number. I checked my text messages. There were no security codes from the bank. Whoever did this had intercepted the authentication texts or changed my phone number in the system. I need to speak with a manager, I insisted. This is theft. While on hold, my phone chimed with a text message from Ethan. Thanks, sis. You always come through when it matters most. My blood ran cold. There was no question now who had taken my money. But why would the bank allow such large transfers without additional verification? I needed answers. The bank manager, Mr. Sanderson, came on the line with disturbing news. Ms. Mitchell, I'm reviewing your account history. These transfers appear suspicious, but they were authorized using all proper security protocols. More concerning is that your account shows a different phone number for authentication purposes, changed approximately 3 weeks ago. I never changed my phone number in the system, I said, my voice rising. The change was made online, using your credentials, he explained. There's something else you should know. Your account has 2 authorized users. What? That's impossible. I opened this account when I turned 18. I'm the only authorized user. According to our records, Robert and Diana Mitchell were added as co-signers when the account was opened. As co-signers, they have legal access to initiate transfers. The room seemed to tilt. My parents? They couldn't be involved in this. Despite our differences, they wouldn't steal from me. Would they? After hanging up with the bank, I rushed to my laptop to check for signs of tampering. The browser history showed searches for how to reset banking passwords and bypassing 2-factor authentication from 3 weeks ago, the day Ethan had visited. My email trash folder contained deleted password reset confirmations. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. Mom and Dad say you should come to dinner tonight. Big news to celebrate. 7 p.m. Numbness gave way to fury as the pieces clicked into place. This wasn't random theft. This was calculated, familial betrayal. I grabbed my car keys, determination replacing shock. I wouldn't wait until dinner. It was time for answers. The 40-minute drive to my parents' suburban home in Naperville passed in a blur of rage and disbelief. Questions pounded through my mind with each mile. How could they? What gave them the right? Did they ever care about me at all? As I turned onto Maple Avenue, the street where I'd grown up, my headlights illuminated something unexpected in my parents' driveway, a gleaming black BMW M5, still sporting temporary dealer plates. The price tag for such a vehicle started around $85,000. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I parked behind it. Through the large front windows, I could see my family gathered in the dining room. They were dressed nicely, champagne flutes in hand, laughing, celebrating. With my money. I didn't bother knocking. Using my old house key, I pushed open the front door and marched straight to the dining room. The conversation halted abruptly as 4 faces turned toward me. Mom, Dad, Ethan, and his fiancée, Sophia. Olivia. Mom exclaimed, surprise evident in her voice. We weren't expecting you until 7. Clearly, I said coldly, looking at the elaborate dinner spread and champagne. Don't let me interrupt the celebration. What's the occasion? An uncomfortable silence settled over the room until Ethan broke it with a broad smile. Perfect timing, sis. We were just toasting to my good news. I'm officially debt-free. Paid off the last of my student loans yesterday. Is that right? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. And how exactly did you manage that? Last I heard, you had over $40,000 in student debt and were making payments of $200 a month. Ethan glanced nervously at our parents before answering. Well, things turned around. The investments Dad helped me with really paid off. Investments, I repeated flatly. And I suppose those same investments paid for that new BMW in the driveway? And what else? Your upcoming honeymoon to Europe that Sophia's been posting about on Instagram. My father stood up, his expression hardening. Olivia, you're being rude. If you've come to join us for dinner, sit down and have a glass of champagne. We're celebrating your brother's financial turnaround. My financial turnaround, I corrected him, pulling out my phone and opening my banking app. I turned the screen toward them, showing the decimated balance. $216,000. Transferred out of my account in the past week. Care to explain how that happened? My mother's hand flew to her throat, her eyes widening in what appeared to be shock. But something about her reaction seemed rehearsed, inauthentic. What are you talking about? She asked. Don't, I snapped. Don't pretend you don't know. The bank already confirmed the transfers were authorized using your credentials as co-signers on my account. An account I opened when I was 18. An account you were never supposed to have access to. Ethan at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, shifting in his seat and avoiding my gaze. Sophia looked genuinely confused, glancing between my brother and me. What's going on, Ethan? She asked. What is Olivia talking about? Before he could answer, my father spoke, his tone surprisingly calm. Olivia, sit down. You're making a scene over nothing. Nothing? You call stealing over $200,000 nothing. It wasn't stealing, Dad replied, his voice hardening. It was reallocation of family resources. Your brother needed help, and you had the means to provide it. I stared at him in disbelief. Reallocation? You stole my life savings without my knowledge or consent. We did what was necessary for this family, Mom interjected, finding her voice. Ethan needed to clear his debts before the wedding. The car was an investment in his image for his new job interviews. The honeymoon is a once-in-a-lifetime experience they deserve. And what about what I deserve? I asked, my voice breaking slightly. What about the years I worked while going to school? The vacations I never took? The tiny apartment I lived in to save that money? Ethan finally spoke up, his tone surprisingly entitled. Come on, Liv. It's not like you needed all that money just sitting there. You're always so uptight about finances. I had actual needs. Needs? I repeated incredulously. A BMW and a European honeymoon are needs? You don't understand, he continued, gesturing with his champagne glass. Sophia's family has expectations. Her father gave us $20,000 toward the wedding. I couldn't show up to marry his daughter while drowning in student debt and driving my old Honda. I turned to Sophia, whose expression had transformed from confusion to horror as she realized what was happening. Did you know about this? I asked her directly. Did you know your honeymoon and his debt repayment were funded by stealing my savings? No, she stammered, looking at Ethan with new eyes. He told me his investments had paid off, that your parents had helped him with financial planning. My mother quickly jumped in. It's all family money in the end, Olivia. We've supported both of you throughout your lives. That's a lie, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You paid for Ethan's education. You bought him cars. You subsidized his rent. Meanwhile, I worked my way through community college and state university. I paid for everything myself. And we're very proud of how independent you've become, Dad said condescendingly. But family helps family. Your brother needed this boost to start his married life on the right foot. So you admit you took my money? All of you. Dad shrugged, dropping all pretense. The money has been put to good use. Ethan's debt is cleared, they have a suitable vehicle, and their honeymoon is paid for. The remaining funds are in an investment account for their future home down payment. I want it back, I said firmly. All of it. Now. My father's expression changed then, from casual dismissal to cold anger. That's not going to happen, Olivia. The transfers were legal. As co-signers on your account, your mother and I had every right to move those funds. I'll go to the police, I threatened. I'll press charges for theft. He actually laughed then, a sound that chilled me to the bone. And tell them what? That your parents, who are legal co-signers on your account, moved money to help your brother? No crime has been committed here. I never added you as co-signers to my adult account. Never. Check again, Mom said quietly. When you opened that account at 18, we came with you. We signed the paperwork. You were so excited about your adult account, you didn't read the fine print. The memory came back in fragments. The bank visit after my 18th birthday. The pile of documents. My parents hovering, offering to help make sure everything was in order. I had been so naive. Why? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why would you do this to me? Because family takes care of family, Dad replied coldly. You've benefited from this family your entire life. It was time you contributed. Benefited? I nearly shouted. I put myself through college. I built my career without any help from you. And who raised you? Fed you? Clothed you? Dad countered. Did you think that was free? Your brother needed help, and you had the means to provide it. As your father, I made the decision that was best for this family as a whole. Tears of rage and betrayal burned in my eyes. I am not an ATM for this family. That money represented years of my life. And it will represent years of Ethan and Sophia's life together, Mom said, as if that justified everything. Dad raised his glass in a mocking toast. Thanks for your naivety, Olivia. Your family now, pay your share. The casual cruelty of his words knocked the breath from my lungs. In that moment, I realized this wasn't a one-time betrayal. This was who they had always been. I had just been too desperate for their approval to see it. I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls to come back and be reasonable. In my car, I sat trembling, unable to drive immediately as waves of betrayal washed over me. Through the window, I could see them resume their celebration, already moving past the uncomfortable confrontation, already counting my life savings as their own. The following morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Sleep had eluded me, my mind racing with calculations of loss and betrayal. $216,000. 11 years of sacrifice. Gone. After several hours of research on banking laws and account co-signers, I called my parents' home phone, determined to make one last attempt at reason before escalating to legal action. My father answered on the third ring. Mitchell residence. It's Olivia. We need to talk about the money. His sigh was audible through the phone. There's nothing to discuss. The decision has been made. I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing, I said, keeping my voice steady. Transfer the money back to my account, and I won't take further action. Further action? He chuckled. Olivia, be realistic. The funds were legally accessed. No crime was committed. I'll sue you, I threatened. All 3 of you. I'll take you to court and make sure everyone knows what you did. On what grounds? We're co-signers on the account. Co-signers who committed fraud by accessing an account without the primary account holder's knowledge or consent. There was a pause before he spoke again, his voice taking on a more calculating tone. Before you make threats, there's something you should know. This isn't the first time we've accessed your accounts. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? We've been monitoring your finances for years, Olivia. Did you really think you were so clever, keeping everything secret from us? We've known about every raise, every bonus, every investment. That's impossible, I whispered, but a creeping dread told me he was telling the truth. When you were 24 and received that $15,000 performance bonus, where do you think the money went when it suddenly disappeared from your checking account? When you complained about the bank error, who suggested you just let it go because it wasn't worth the hassle? The memory surfaced, my first major bonus, the mysterious bank error, my father advising me not to waste time pursuing it. That was you. Family resources, Olivia. We needed a new roof that year. You had extra. It was a simple reallocation. My free hand gripped the kitchen counter for support as the room seemed to spin. How many times? Does it matter? The point is, we've always had access. The only difference this time is the amount. Why now? Why take so much at once? Ethan's wedding is in 2 months. He needed a clean financial slate. The timing was right. The casual way he discussed stealing my life savings made me physically ill. Did Mom know? About all of it? Of course. It was her idea to monitor your accounts after you moved out. She said you were too secretive about money, that you might need guidance without realizing it. My mother's voice came on the line then, apparently listening on another extension. Olivia, try to understand. Families share resources. You've always been so selfish with your money, squirreling it away while your brother struggled. Selfish? I earned every penny of that money. And who gave you the upbringing that allowed you to succeed? She countered. Who provided the stable home, the good schools, the moral guidance? You didn't achieve financial success in a vacuum, Olivia. You owe your family. I owe you nothing, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You've taken enough. We've taken what was needed, Dad interjected. And frankly, we're disappointed in your reaction. This level of selfishness is unbecoming. The audacity left me speechless for several seconds. You steal my life savings and then criticize me for being upset about it? We expected more maturity from you, Mom said. Ethan understands family obligations. He's always been willing to share. Share what? Ethan has never had anything to share. He's been taking from you, and now from me, his entire life. At that moment, I heard Ethan's voice in the background. Is that Olivia? Let me talk to her. The phone rustled as it changed hands. Liv, you need to calm down, my brother said, his tone condescending. This isn't as big a deal as you're making it. $216,000 isn't a big deal to you? Look, I needed it more than you did. You're single, focused on your career. I'm starting a family, a home, a future. And my future doesn't matter? He sighed dramatically. Your future is fine. You make good money. You'll save it up again in no time. That money represented 11 years of my life, Ethan. And it will represent the foundation of my marriage. Isn't that more important? Don't you want me to be happy? The conversation was becoming surreal. Not at the expense of my financial security. Not through theft. It wasn't theft, he insisted, echoing our father. I've been tracking your finances for years. You have more squirreled away than you're admitting. His words stopped me cold. What did you say? Your little savings account isn't your only money, Liv. I've seen your investment portfolio. The cryptocurrency. The foreign accounts. You've been spying on me? The violation felt even deeper than the theft. Monitoring, he corrected casually. Remote access software. Installed it when I visited your apartment last month. You really should be more careful about letting people use your laptop. My mind raced back to his visit, his unusual interest in my finances, the 15 minutes he'd spent alone with my computer. You installed spyware on my laptop? Just keeping tabs on family resources, he said, using our father's phrase. Good thing I did, or we wouldn't have known about your little nest egg. I hung up without another word, feeling violated in ways I couldn't articulate. This wasn't just about money anymore. My family had been systematically spying on me, stealing from me, gaslighting me for years. The betrayal was so complete, so thorough, that for a moment, sitting alone in my kitchen, I considered giving up. What was the point of fighting back against people who could justify such actions? People who saw me not as a daughter or sister, but as a resource to be exploited? That night, in my darkest moment, I sat on my bathroom floor with a bottle of sleeping pills, contemplating the ultimate escape from pain. The betrayal felt too enormous to bear. Not just the money, but the years of manipulation and lies. The realization that the family I had desperately tried to please had never valued me beyond what I could provide. As I stared at the bottle, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my colleague Lauren's name. I almost didn't answer, but some small part of me reached for connection. Hello. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. Olivia? Are you okay? You never miss work. The simple concern in her voice broke something inside me, and I found myself telling her everything through broken sobs. The theft, the years of manipulation, the spyware, all of it. Don't move, she said when I finished. I'm coming over right now. And Olivia? Flush those pills. This isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your liberation. Her words, filled with righteous anger on my behalf, sparked something inside me. Not hope, exactly. Something harder, more resilient. Determination. By the time Lauren arrived 30 minutes later, I had flushed the pills and washed my face. When she hugged me at the door, I didn't break down again. Instead, I felt a cold clarity settling over me. They think they've won, I told her as we sat at my kitchen table. They think I'll either give up or start over from nothing. Lauren, who worked in Deloitte's forensic accounting division, looked at me with fierce determination. They have no idea who they're dealing with, do they? No, I said, something like a smile forming on my lips for the first time in days. But they're about to find out. Lauren stayed with me that night, sleeping on my couch after helping me form the outline of a plan. The next morning, she connected me with her friend Jackson Reed, a lawyer specializing in financial fraud cases. Technically, they had legal access to the account, Jackson explained during our consultation in his downtown Chicago office. But there's a legal concept called breach of fiduciary duty that might apply here. Co-signers on an account have a duty to act in the best interest of the primary account holder. They clearly breached that, I said. Exactly. And the electronic surveillance angle strengthens your case considerably. Installing spyware without consent is illegal in Illinois under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Hope flickered. So I have legal recourse? Potentially. But litigation is expensive and time-consuming. And family court cases get messy. He leaned forward. Tell me something. When exactly did you open this account? On my 18th birthday. August 16th, 2014. Jackson tapped some notes into his tablet. And your parents were added as co-signers that same day? Yes. Apparently, I missed that detail in the paperwork. Co-signer status on most bank accounts includes an automatic expiration clause, he said thoughtfully. Typically 7 years unless explicitly renewed. My heart skipped. It's been 11 years. Precisely. I'd need to see the original account documents, but there's a strong possibility their co-signer status legally expired 4 years ago, which would make the recent transfers unauthorized and fraudulent, he finished with a slight smile. The bank failed in its duty by allowing expired co-signers to access your account. They might share liability here. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt a glimmer of genuine hope. How do we proceed? First, we need evidence. Documented proof of the spyware installation, recordings of them admitting to the transfers, and the original account documents showing the co-signer expiration date. I can get the spyware evidence easily enough, I said. My company's IT department can document it. But recordings? They'll never admit to anything if they know they're being recorded. Illinois is a two-party consent state for recordings, Jackson acknowledged. That makes things trickier, but not impossible. Sometimes the threat of litigation is enough to force a settlement. Over the next 2 weeks, I executed a carefully orchestrated plan. First, I took my laptop to Deloitte's cybersecurity team, who documented the sophisticated spyware Ethan had installed. They traced its command and control server to an IP address registered to my brother's apartment. This is industrial-grade surveillance software, explained Marcus, our head of cybersecurity. The kind used for corporate espionage. Not something an amateur would have access to. My brother works in sales, I said. Where would he get something like this? Marcus shrugged. The dark web, most likely. It's expensive, though. Several $1,000s for this level of access. The irony wasn't lost on me. Ethan had spent thousands of dollars to steal hundreds of thousands. Next, I hired a private investigator recommended by Jackson to look into my family's finances. What she uncovered was illuminating. My father, despite his middle management salary, had accumulated significant gambling debts at riverboat casinos along the Mississippi. My mother's credit card statements showed compulsive shopping habits, with thousands spent monthly on luxury goods. And Ethan, far from the successful businessman he portrayed himself as, had been fired from his last 3 jobs for performance issues. Your family has been living beyond their means for years, the investigator explained, showing me spreadsheets detailing their finances. Your father has second and third mortgages on the house. Your mother has maxed out 7 credit cards. Your brother hasn't made his student loan payment in over 2 years before the recent payoff. So they were desperate, I mused. Desperate and accustomed to financial shortcuts, she confirmed. There's something else you should know. Your brother never actually completed his degree. What? But he walked at graduation. We all attended. Students can walk in the ceremony without completing all requirements. According to university records, he's still 12 credits short of his degree. He never finished his final semester courses, but told your parents he graduated. The deception was staggering. My entire family had created an elaborate facade of middle-class respectability while secretly drowning in debt, failed responsibilities, and lies. Armed with this information, I moved to the next phase of my plan. Through subtle questioning of Sophia at a coincidental meeting at her favorite coffee shop, I learned that Ethan had told her he'd received a family inheritance that explained his sudden financial turnaround. She had no idea the money had come from me. He said his grandmother had left a trust that matured on his 30th birthday, Sophia explained, stirring her latte. $200,000 that his parents had been managing for him. That's interesting, I said carefully. Our grandmother Helen died when Ethan was 16, and she left her modest savings to a cat sanctuary. There was no trust. Sophia's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror. But the money for the honeymoon, the BMW, paying off his loans. Ask him where it really came from, I suggested gently. You deserve to know the truth before you marry him. The final piece fell into place when Jackson obtained the original account documents from First Midwest Bank through legal discovery. As he had suspected, the co-signer authorization had a standard 7-year expiration date. My parents' legal access to my account had ended on August 16, 2021, nearly 4 years before they emptied it. The bank is liable for allowing unauthorized access, Jackson confirmed. They failed to enforce their own security protocols. Between this and the documented spyware, we have a strong case for both civil damages and criminal charges. Criminal charges? The possibility hadn't fully registered until then. Computer fraud is a felony in Illinois. So, is bank fraud exceeding $100,000? The implications were enormous. My father could lose his job. My mother might lose her teaching license. Ethan could face actual jail time. Part of me hesitated at the brink of such irrevocable action. Despite everything, they were still my family. But then I remembered my father's cold words. Thanks for your naivety, your family now, pay your share. Let's proceed, I told Jackson firmly. But there's something I need to do first. Ethan and Sophia's wedding was scheduled for the first Saturday in June at the Naperville Country Club, a venue far beyond what my brother could legitimately afford. I had received an invitation despite our confrontation, probably because my parents wanted to maintain appearances. I sent an RSVP indicating I would attend, then made no contact with my family for the next 6 weeks. Let them think I had given up. Let them enjoy their ill-gotten gains without suspecting what was coming. During those weeks, I worked with Jackson to build an airtight case. We documented every unauthorized transfer. We compiled evidence of the spyware and my parents' expired co-signer status. We prepared civil complaints against both my family and First Midwest Bank. And most importantly, I executed the final step of my plan, the revelation that would change everything. The wedding day arrived sunny and clear. I dressed carefully in a conservative blue dress, applied minimal makeup, and drove to the country club with a small gift box containing documentation of everything we had discovered. My plan was to deliver it privately after the ceremony but before the reception, giving my family one last chance to make things right before I filed legal actions on Monday morning. But as I pulled into the country club parking lot, I noticed an unusual number of luxury vehicles. A Ferrari. A Bentley. several high-end Mercedes. These weren't the cars of my parents' middle-class friends. Something was happening beyond a typical wedding. Inside, the ceremony space was decorated lavishly with thousands of dollars in floral arrangements. A string quartet played softly as guests in formal attire mingled. I recognized few of them, but from conversations I overheard, many were executives from Hoffman Enterprises, a major financial services firm in Chicago. I took a seat in the back row just as my father appeared at the front with Ethan. Both wore custom tuxedos that must have cost thousands. My mother, escorted by an usher to her front row seat, wore a designer dress and jewelry I had never seen before. The ceremony proceeded traditionally until the exchange of vows. When Ethan began to speak, his words caught me completely off guard. Sophia, when we met 3 years ago, I promised you I would become the man worthy of your family's legacy. Today, I stand before you having fulfilled that promise. Thanks to my business acumen and family connections, I've secured not just our future, but a merger between our families that will create a financial dynasty. Whispers rippled through the audience. This didn't sound like a wedding vow. It sounded like a business transaction. After the ceremony, guests moved to the grand ballroom for the reception. I followed quietly, observing rather than participating. The cocktail hour revealed more surprises as I overheard conversations about the Mitchell-Hoffman merger and Ethan's appointment to the board. My confusion cleared when an older gentleman clinked his glass for attention and introduced himself as Gerald Hoffman, Sophia's father and CEO of Hoffman Enterprises. Today isn't just a union of two young people in love, he announced. It's the beginning of a powerful alliance between the Mitchell Financial Group and Hoffman Enterprises. Ethan has demonstrated extraordinary financial acumen, building a multi-million-dollar portfolio that impressed even my board of directors. His recent investment strategy, resulting in over $1 million in gains, proves he has the vision to help lead our company into the future. $1 million in gains? My stolen $216,000 had somehow transformed into a $1 million success story? Gerald continued, as a wedding gift, I'm announcing Ethan's appointment as Vice President of Strategic Development at Hoffman Enterprises with a starting compensation package of $350,000 annually. The room erupted in applause while I sat frozen in shock. My brother had leveraged my stolen savings into an executive position at his father-in-law's company. The audacity was breathtaking. My plans for a private confrontation evaporated. This deception was too grand, too public to address quietly. As Gerald concluded his speech and invited Ethan to say a few words, I stood up, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. "Excuse me," I said loudly enough to draw attention. "I believe I have some relevant information about Ethan's financial acumen that Mr. Hoffman might want to hear." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. Ethan's face drained of color as he recognized me. My parents, seated at the head table, looked stricken. "Olivia," my father started, rising from his seat. "This isn't the time or place." "I disagree," I replied calmly, walking toward the front of the room. When better to discuss Ethan's financial genius than during a celebration of exactly that? I turned to face Gerald Hoffman directly. "Mr. Hoffman, I'm Olivia Mitchell, Ethan's sister. I'm curious, what specifically impressed you about my brother's investment strategy?" Gerald, though clearly uncomfortable with the interruption, answered professionally. Ethan presented a diversified portfolio showing extraordinary returns over a very short period. He explained his unique approach to leveraging family assets into exponential growth. "Family assets," I repeated. "That's an interesting choice of words. Did he happen to mention where those initial family assets came from?" "Olivia, stop this now," my mother hissed, but I ignored her. "Mr. Hoffman, what would you say if I told you that the money Ethan used to impress you was stolen? That the $216,000 he started with was taken from my personal savings account without my knowledge or consent?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Gerald looked to Ethan, whose face had gone from pale to gray. That's a serious accusation, Gerald said carefully. It is. And I can prove it. I opened my purse and removed a folder containing bank statements, transfer records, and the legal documents Jackson had prepared. Every dollar Ethan used to build his impressive portfolio was stolen from me. My parents, whose co-signer status on my account had legally expired 4 years ago, helped him do it. I handed the folder to Gerald, who took it reflexively. Furthermore, the spyware my brother installed on my computer to monitor my finances is a federal crime under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. I've documented it all. Ethan lunged forward, his composure completely shattered. She's lying. The money was a family resource. Tell them, Dad. My father stood frozen, his face a mask of panic as his carefully constructed house of cards began to collapse. Gerald Hoffman opened the folder and scanned the first few pages, his expression darkening. Is this true, Robert? He asked my father directly. Before Dad could formulate a response, I delivered the final blow. What none of them know, I said clearly, ensuring my voice carried throughout the ballroom, is that the $216,000 they stole was actually just a small portion of my assets. A test, if you will. Confused looks passed between my family members. You see, for the past 5 years, I've been conducting a financial experiment. The account you emptied was deliberately established as bait, containing roughly 15% of my actual savings. The real money, approximately $1.2 million, is held in a series of offshore accounts and investments that none of you could access. The shock on their faces was everything I had hoped for. My father actually staggered backward, gripping the edge of the table for support. I suspected someone was monitoring my finances after several small discrepancies over the years. So I created a financial honeypot, a separate account with just enough money to be tempting, but not my full savings. Then I waited to see if anyone would take the bait. That's impossible, Ethan sputtered. I saw your accounts. All of them. You saw what I wanted you to see, I corrected him. Fake statements, dummy accounts, digital breadcrumbs leading exactly where I wanted them to lead. Did you really think a certified accountant with specialization in forensic financial analysis wouldn't notice spyware on her own computer? Gerald Hoffman closed the folder and handed it to a man I presumed was his lawyer, who had appeared at his side. Mr. Mitchell, Gerald said to my father, his voice ice cold, I believe this wedding reception is concluded. My lawyer will be contacting you regarding the funds Ethan fraudulently represented as his own. Sophia, he turned to his daughter, who stood shocked and tearful beside Ethan, we're leaving. Wait, Sophia pleaded. There must be some explanation. There is, I said gently. Your fiancé stole my money, lied about his education, and defrauded your father to secure a position he isn't qualified for. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you deserve to know before legally binding yourself to him. As the Hoffman family began a hasty exit, followed by their business associates, I approached my brother directly. The police will be here shortly. I filed charges this morning for computer fraud and theft. I'd suggest you use this time to consider what you'll say to them. My parents rushed to Ethan's side, all three huddled together in panic as their scheme imploded around them. The remaining guests, mostly family friends who had known us for years, watched in stunned silence. You'll destroy this family, my mother said accusingly, tears streaming down her face. No, Mother. You destroyed this family when you chose to steal from your own daughter rather than face your financial problems honestly. When you decided my decade of hard work was worth less than Ethan's comfort. As I turned to leave, my father called after me, his voice breaking, Olivia, please. We can fix this. As a family. I paused and looked back at the three of them, gathered together in their expensive clothes in the lavish venue they couldn't afford, paid for with money they had stolen from me. We stopped being a family the moment you said, thanks for your naivety, you're family now, pay your share. Remember those words, Dad? I do. I always will. I walked out of the country club into the bright June sunshine, leaving behind the ruins of a family built on lies, theft, and betrayal. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt not just anger or vindication, but genuine freedom. The truth about my finances had been my ultimate protection and my perfect revenge. The money they had stolen was substantial, yes, but it wasn't my everything. By trying to take what was mine, they had lost everything that was theirs: reputation, career prospects, and freedom. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. "How did it go?" I smiled and typed back, "Exactly according to plan. The truth has set me free." The aftermath of Ethan's wedding day unfolded like a slow-motion car crash for my family. My brother was arrested that afternoon on charges of computer fraud, with additional charges of grand theft added later. My parents avoided criminal charges only because I chose not to pursue them, focusing instead on a civil case to recover my stolen funds. First Midwest Bank, facing potential liability for allowing expired co-signers to access my account, settled quickly, refunding the full amount plus a substantial penalty for their negligence. My family, with no real defense against the evidence I had presented, agreed to a structured repayment plan for the additional damages awarded by the court. The financial resolution came relatively quickly. The emotional healing proved far more complex. For the first month after the confrontation, I existed in a strange limbo between vindication and grief. I had exposed their betrayal and would recover my money. Yet I had also lost the illusion of family that I had clung to for so many years. No matter how strained our relationship had been, some part of me had always believed that in a true crisis, blood would prove thicker than water. The theft had shattered that belief beyond repair. 6 weeks after the wedding, I began seeing Dr. Melissa Chin, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Our first session established the foundation for my healing journey. "What you're experiencing is complicated grief," she explained. "You're mourning not just the loss of your family relationships as they existed, but also the loss of what those relationships should have been." "I keep asking myself if I did the right thing," I confessed. "Exposing them publicly, pressing charges against Ethan. And what answer do you reach? That I had no choice. That they would have continued exploiting me if I hadn't stopped them." She nodded. "That's an important recognition. Boundaries aren't just psychological constructs. Sometimes they need legal and financial enforcement, especially when dealing with people who have demonstrated they don't respect more subtle limits." Over the following months, Dr. Chin helped me process the complex emotions surrounding the betrayal. The anger, which initially burned hot and consuming, gradually transformed into something more controlled and focused. The grief, which sometimes ambushed me at unexpected moments, became less raw and more contemplative. "Your family trained you from childhood to be their safety net," Dr. Chin observed during one particularly insightful session. "Your financial responsibility wasn't just a personal trait, it was a response to their financial chaos. They created the very stability they eventually exploited." This perspective helped me see my saving habits in a new light. While I had always viewed my frugality as a strength, I began to recognize that some aspects of my financial behavior had been reactions to family dysfunction rather than purely healthy choices. "Balance will be your challenge going forward," Dr. Chin suggested. "Finding the middle ground between prudent saving and actually enjoying the fruits of your labor." As summer faded into fall, I took her advice to heart and made several significant changes. I moved from my cramped studio apartment to a comfortable one-bedroom in a safer neighborhood. I booked my first real vacation in years, a 2-week photography tour of the American Southwest. I bought quality furniture to replace the second-hand pieces I had used since college. Small steps toward enjoying my money rather than just accumulating it. More importantly, I began building what therapists call a chosen family. Lauren, whose immediate support had been my lifeline during the crisis, became an even closer friend. We established a Sunday brunch tradition, sharing weekly updates and gradually deeper confidences. Jackson, my attorney, and his wife invited me to their monthly dinner parties, introducing me to a diverse group of professionals who shared my values of integrity and independence. Through a volunteer program at a local community college, I began teaching financial literacy classes to young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. Sharing my knowledge helped transform my painful experience into something constructive. Each time I helped a 20-year-old understand compound interest or create her first budget, I felt a piece of my stolen joy return. In one of these classes, I met Jasmine, a bright 19-year-old raising her younger brother after their parents' death. Her determination to create financial stability while pursuing her education reminded me of my younger self, but with a generosity of spirit I had never possessed. How do you balance taking care of your brother with saving for your own future? I asked her after class one evening. Her answer stayed with me. Family isn't about keeping score. It's about lifting each other up when you can and accepting help when you need it. The giving flows both ways. Her wisdom, earned through genuine hardship rather than selfishness, illuminated the fundamental flaw in my family's philosophy. They had viewed family resources as something to be extracted rather than exchanged. Love had been transactional rather than unconditional. As the one-year anniversary of the theft approached, I received an unexpected letter from Sophia, Ethan's ex-fiancée. She had moved to Boston, started a new job, and wanted to thank me for the painful but necessary truth I had revealed. For a long time, I was angry at you for ruining what should have been the happiest day of my life, she wrote. But with distance, I've come to see that you saved me from a lifetime of deception. Ethan wasn't who I thought he was, and discovering that before legal marriage was a gift, though it didn't feel like one at the time. Her letter reminded me that truth, however painful, ultimately serves healing better than comfortable lies. My family had maintained their facade of normalcy through decades of small deceptions that eventually culminated in the massive betrayal of the theft. By exposing their actions, I had broken a generational pattern of dishonesty. 2 years after the confrontation at the wedding, I received news that my father had suffered a heart attack. Despite everything, I sent flowers to the hospital but did not visit. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt, but acknowledgement of our shared humanity remained possible. My mother called to thank me for the flowers, our first direct communication since the court proceedings had concluded. Your father would like to see you, she said, her voice smaller than I remembered. I'm not ready for that, I replied honestly. Will you ever be? I don't know. Some betrayals change who we are at a fundamental level. I'm not the same person who desperately wanted your approval. We made a terrible mistake, she admitted, the closest thing to an apology I had ever heard from her. Yes, you did. But the mistake wasn't taking my money. It was believing I was less deserving of love and respect than Ethan. That mistake started when I was a child and culminated when you emptied my account. The silence that followed contained decades of unspoken truths. I understand now why you did what you did, she said finally. At the wedding. You had every right. It wasn't forgiveness she offered, merely understanding. And perhaps that was all that was possible between us now. Take care of yourself, Mom, I said before ending the call. That brief conversation marked a turning point in my healing. I had faced my family without being drawn back into their dysfunction. I had acknowledged our connection without compromising my boundaries. I had moved from reactive anger to proactive peace. The final step in my journey came unexpectedly through my work with young women in the financial literacy program. After expanding the curriculum to include protection against financial abuse, I was approached by a publishing company interested in developing these materials into a book. Financial Boundaries: Protecting Your Assets in a World of Takers became not just a practical guide, but a vehicle for sharing the hard-earned wisdom from my experience. The advance allowed me to expand the program to 3 additional community colleges, reaching hundreds more young women at critical points in their financial lives. At a book signing event, a young woman waited until the end of the line to approach me. Your story saved me, she said quietly. I was engaged to someone who kept borrowing from my savings without repaying. Reading about your experience helped me recognize the pattern before it was too late. Her words crystallized the ultimate lesson of my journey. Our most painful experiences, when transformed through reflection and courage, become the light that guides others through similar darkness. Today, 5 years after discovering my emptied account, I live a life balanced between prudent financial management and genuine enjoyment of my resources. My investment portfolio has recovered and grown substantially. I own a comfortable condominium with a spare bedroom that serves as both home office and guest room for the friends who have become my true family. I have not reconciled with my parents or brother, though I hear occasional updates through mutual acquaintances. Ethan served 6 months in county jail and remains on probation. My parents sold their house to pay legal debts and downsized to an apartment. Their financial reckoning was painful but perhaps necessary for their own growth. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me instead became the foundation for a more authentic life. By stealing my savings, my family inadvertently freed me from the emotional debt I had carried since childhood, the desperate need to earn their love and approval. In losing my money, I found my worth, not as a financial resource to be exploited, but as a person deserving of respect and honest connection. The most profound truth I've learned is that family isn't defined by blood, but by behavior. Real family, whether biological or chosen, lifts you up rather than drains you dry. Real family celebrates your success rather than exploiting it. Real family sees your boundaries not as obstacles to overcome, but as guideposts for respectful love. If you're watching this and recognizing patterns of financial exploitation in your own relationships, remember, your resources are extensions of your time, energy, and life force. Protecting them isn't selfish, it's self-respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and others, is to say no to those who would take without regard for your well-being. What's your experience with financial boundaries in relationships? Have you ever had to protect yourself from those who felt entitled to your resources? Share your story in the comments, and if this resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more conversations about financial independence and healthy relationships. Thank you for witnessing my journey from betrayal to empowerment. May your own path lead to both prosperity and peace.